Hello, uh, it's me again. Welcome to episode 81 of Mark Talks About His Record Collection. Today is Tuesday, the 13th of April, 2021. Not that that means anything very much to anybody anymore, because nothing means very much, and the passing of time sometimes seems like it's almost an irrelevant and abstract concept where they're merely just numbers on a page that pass you by. But today is Tuesday, it's the second day of the reopening of society. I have been vaccinated last month, and I think I'm ready for some kind of new world to go back into. But obviously, as I've mentioned before, going back into the old world, just picking up where we left off as if there was nothing's changed and we've not learnt any lessons from any of this past year seems a little strange to me. Also, of course, I do pay quite a lot of attention to the news. I noticed yesterday the government said that they were hoping for a wall of money to be released from savings for people to be spending it in shops, which just goes to show how little they know about the lives that many, many people in this country live, because I don't know that many people who are quite literally sitting on piles of cash laughing like Scrooge McDuck. But that is another thing. Today I'm going to be talking about a band that I love, which I haven't talked about for a little while. I'm going to do 3 of their albums today on the grounds that I don't think there's any point in me padding out me talking about one album for 45 minutes, because I don't think I can do it. And also, there's not much I can say apart from things which I've read in books, actually. So today I'm going to be talking about 3 Cure records. I'm going to be talking about 17 Seconds. I'm going to be talking about Faith and Pornography and the related singles that go with it. Now, this is where I have to hold my hands up for full transparency and say that even though this period of the band is absolutely beloved by many, many people, and quite rightly so, they're very, very good albums. To me, this era of the band, up to the end of the Pornography era, has always seemed to me to be more of a historical fact as opposed to a reality for me, because when the Pornography tour came to an end in 1982, I wasn't even 10 years old. So I've got no memory of anything like this that have happened. And my introduction to The Cure, by the way, was a BBC TV broadcast of The Cure in Orange. I should have got my VHS tape over there out to show that, yes, I did later buy the antiquated VHS tape of The Cure in Orange. And for me, discovering these songs, I didn't discover these songs in real time. They'd existed from the very moment that I first loved The Cure. You know, the song that got me into The Cure was the BBC broadcast of In Orange, which was the first hour of the film, which ended with a forest. And so, as far as I was concerned, I was watching a forest. It was probably about 1 o'clock in the morning on BBC One as a 14-year-old kid, and they were showing, the version of the band as was, with Boris, Paul, Simon, Lol on keyboards, and obviously Robert, and that was the version of The Cure which I first encountered. That was, in my opinion, that was the start of The Cure, and the fact that somebody else played drums on a forest meant nothing to me. I watched video footage of The Cure from that era, and on an intellectual level, I know that's The Cure with Lol on drums, but from an emotional level, it feels to me like it's pictures of your girlfriend before you started going out with her. It's like that. Yeah, I mean, those might be your memories and those might be real to you, but they don't exist to me. Also, and this is where I'm going to feel very, very, very old, of course, because there is no way that you can do or you can discuss old records from your childhood without feeling very, very old. Also, this month is the 41st anniversary of A Forest, the very same song which I was talking about earlier on. This is the first single that was released by The Cure from the 17 Seconds album. But The Cure had to change since the last time we'd seen them. So the last time I spoke about The Cure, they'd just released Jumping Someone Else's Train. And they were still a power pop trio, which in the mind of I think it's Chris Parry, who I think worked at the label, he thought they were better than the Police, better than the Jam, according to what he says in this book here, 10 Imaginary Years, which is, by the way, very old now and probably quite expensive to get. Really is due repressing. Chris Parry was of the view that the band were a perfect power pop trio, and of course, if that's the case, then things are obviously going to change. So come to the end of the Three Imaginary Boys period, and Michael Dempsey left the band on bass, and Simon Gallup joined the group, although they auditioned him in quite a sneaky little fashion, because they recorded the Cult Hero single, which I've mentioned in my secret hidden Cure tracks and gems that are lost and should be better known. So for the Cult Hero single, Simon joined on bass and played bass in the studio, and that was pretty much his audition to join the group, and then he became a member of the Cure. And the Cure also added a keyboard player, Matthew Hartley, I believe was his name, and then became something considerably broader and wider. So they weren't necessarily minding a kind of like a post-punk trio approach with 17 Seconds. They were doing wider, broader songs that had bigger, higher highs and lower lows and greater depths, and just added more to the sonic palette of the group. And what you can see is actually there's a lot of groups that add keyboard players as they go along. So Joy Division did it when they added keyboards for some songs towards the later end of their existence, and then New Order added a keyboard player and guitarist in the shape of Gillian Gilbert. Suede added a keyboard player in 1995 with Neil Codling, who's very, very underrated. The Cure added a keyboard player in 1980 with Matthew Hartley, and they've generally not done without a keyboard player ever since. That standard configuration of one or two guitars, keyboards, bass, drums, and obviously Robert Smith doing everything else, laid really the template for everything that the Cure have done since in one form or another. I'm going to try not to quote from this, because otherwise it would feel very much like I am reading the words out from a book, and I am going to be telling you things which are in here. Although you're probably quite fascinated to see what is in here, so I might show you some pictures later on. Actually, no, I'm going to give you a sneak peek preview here. Here's a picture of Lowell on the beach in colour. If this appears in his book, Cured, it's probably in black and white. Conveniently, it's opened up on the page where we talk about Matthew Hartley joining the band. And Lowell says, I thought it was a bit much asking Simon to step in. I thought he might be resented by his mates in Hawley, so I asked Matthew to join as well. I didn't know him very well. I wasn't even sure we'd need any synth lines, but I knew we'd need another instrument at some point. And it would also mean that Simon wasn't the new boy, and he wasn't the odd one out. So there you go. That's the reason why the Cure got a keyboard player, is so Simon didn't feel on his own. Well, that's very thoughtful. And of course, the first fruits from that were the I'm a Cult Hero, I Dig You single, which I Dig You at least is a fantastic song, as I've already mentioned. I absolutely love it. If I was going to do a covers album, it would be on there. But then the first official fruits of the Cure was this single, A Forest, which of course came here in this version, and here's a 7-inch copy of A Forest. In the days when A Forest came out, actually getting singles in plain sleeves was pretty regular, fairly common. Getting them in picture sleeves was actually sometimes harder. I have had real difficulty trying to find copies of early Cure and Depeche Mode singles in picture sleeves, because many copies, probably more than not, were sold in generic black or white sleeves. Sorry, I had to yawn there. It is gone 11 o'clock at night. Generic black or white sleeves. And they weren't sold as objects of art. They were sold as easily consumable and disposable bits of plastic. When people were buying these records, in the same way that when I was buying records when I was a child, these were not meant to last forever. These were fripperies, 3-4 minutes of music that you would listen to, you'd probably grow out of, and you'd probably leave at home at mum and dad's in the spare room when you moved out, got a girlfriend stroke boyfriend stroke wife, husband, dog, cat, car, golf membership, those type of things, and you'd outgrow them. But for me, a Cure record is for life. It's not just for Christmas. This record is 41 years old, and it's been in the wars. Now, I have a sad story to tell about this album. This is not the first time that I've owned a Forest on 12-inch. I bought a copy of the New Zealand green vinyl 12-inch for £1.50 in 2011, and then in 2012 I was made redundant, and I needed to make mortgage payments, and so I sold my copy of the green vinyl Forest 12-inch for over 100 times what I paid for it. I do regret it, but on the other hand, I did the right thing at the time. I did what I absolutely needed to do. And with patience, I managed to pick up this copy of a Forest a few years later for £8, which for the 12-inch sounds pretty surprising until you realise how many creases and crackles and crinkles it's got in it. It's absolutely knackered, this record, by the way. I'm just pointing it out. Absolutely knackered. And even the bottom part of the sleeve has a huge, you can see that there. This record has clearly been very, very loved before it got to me, and it's still loved by me, and it will be. And of course, like most Cure records in this house, they are not leaving if I've got any say in the matter whilst I'm around. So there you have it. So Forest, the first single, probably the second Cure classic song, the one which they've played, I think, probably live more than any other song in their repertoire. Certainly a song that they've played at I think almost every show I've seen them at. There's been a couple of shows they haven't played it at. They didn't play it. I don't think they played it at Roskilde. I don't think they played it at. I don't think. Where else did they not play it? They did. I'm not sure they played it at the From There to Here Royal Festival Hall show. But aside from that, they've played it every show I've seen them, and they've always played the hell out of it. And yeah, absolutely classic Cure track. This is the one that got me into the band. Although, obviously, I was 8 when it came out, which is pretty surprising. I can't believe I was 8. I mean, I can believe I was 8, but I can't believe I was 8 when that happened. To me, I always feel like I was born 10 years too late, because I would have been into the stuff at the time. You know, if I'd have been 18, I know I'd have seen The Cure. Probably the Birmingham Odeon. I know I would have seen them all over the place. I would have seen Depeche Mode. There'd be terrible photographs of me that exist in photo albums where I would have had blonde dyed hair and a collection of Depeche Mode 12 inches. Not very different from now, actually. Obviously, apart from the fact that I don't have any hair, still got the Depeche Mode 12 inches. So, Forest is the precursor to and the advert for the Cure's second album, which is called 17 Seconds. And I think this is a very underrated album. I'm not going to be ambiguous about it. It's bloody brilliant. It really is. It captures a certain kind of air, a certain atmosphere, a certain air of not quite desolation, but not even despair, really. But the whole thing was unforced. It's quite raw. It's very clearly kind of a very honest album that hasn't been thought through to the umpteenth respect. There's no concept behind it. The band wrote the 10 or 11 next songs, and they came out with great ones. You know, there's not a bad song on here. You know, to be as young as they were, and on the second album, to be writing songs like M or At Night or Play for Today or In Your House, that's incredible. You know, other bands, their contemporaries, weren't getting anywhere near that. Much as I love New Order, much as I love Depeche Mode, their second albums were not that good. You know, they didn't have individual songs that were as good as Play for Today or In Your House. And I'm going to talk about, I think I've already talked about the second New Order album. When I talk about the second Depeche Mode album, I'm going to be fairly scathing about that. But the songwriting took a huge, huge leap. So even the songwriting that we had on Three Imaginary Boys, songs like Subway Song and So What and It's Not You and Fire in Cairo, they were the sounds of a spiky, interesting personality that not only had something to say, but also never fell into the cliche that Oscar Wilde spoke about, which is, some people mistake saying something with having something to say. The Cure only ever said things because they had things that they had to say, and that, obviously they haven't made an album for a while, so they don't necessarily have the compulsion to do so. This is a great album. It captures in a snapshot a very specific mood, a very specific feeling, and a very, very kind of specific atmosphere. It's not quite, desolate teenage heartbreak or anything like that, but it is very much, if you want to think about the first 4 Cure albums, this is where somebody's understanding the complications of being an adult and trying to navigate their way through it with some of the best songs which there are. Obviously, M, by the way, by The Cure, has been covered by one of my absolute favourite bands, the Twilight Sad, and they do an absolutely brilliant version of it. It's probably on YouTube. Do give it a listen. I will post a link to it shortly. But 17 Seconds is a great album. Now, this is the original Polydor 1980 version of it. This is I think it's the 2019, possibly 2020 Record Store Day picture disc version of 17 Seconds. And it's actually, this is probably only the second time I've bought 17 Seconds new. Every other copy of 17 Seconds, like every other copy of a Cure album, I bought kind of second hand probably 30 years ago. So if the band want to make money out of it, they've just set up a subscription scheme, guys. I'll find 10 bands, I'll pay them £20 a month, and you guys just send me good stuff in the post. That sounds like a deal to me. It really, really does. And in fact, I don't know why the bands don't do it. But anyway, here's 17 Seconds on picture disc. The Cure seem to be slowly releasing all of their albums on picture disc. The announcements that they've got for Record Store Day this year are picture discs of Faith and Wild Mood Swings. They've also recently put Japanese Whispers out as a picture disc, and I really, really, really need to get round to buying that, but I'm lazy. So, with that in mind, 17 Seconds, a great record, by the way, one I strongly recommend, possibly not the best entry point to start with The Cure. 2006, I think, saw the release of a 2 CD set of 17 Seconds, which came with a bonus disc, and the bonus disc contains lots and lots of live tracks. I think it's got about 8 live songs from the tour on there, of which some of those appear on this. So if you have this and you think, God, I wish I could buy the tracks on this on CD, this is where you need to go. You need to get your 17 Seconds 2 CD set. And it's got the A and B side of Cult Hero. It's got the demos of Another Journey by Train, Secrets, and yeah, those two. And then it's also got and it's got an alternate studio mix of 3, and then it's got live versions of 17 Seconds, In Your House, I Dig You, I'm a Cult Hero, M, Final Sound, Reflection, Play for Today, At Night, and A Forest. Yeah, absolutely banging live versions, by the way. Of course, what we're finding here with this era of the band is Lol's on drums, and Lol is not the best drummer in the world. I'm probably better than him, actually, although I am, of course, tragically out of practice at this point in my life. But in terms of technical ability, what I think probably the Cure's minimum area of acceptable performance in terms of dexterity and ability was probably somewhere very near Lol's maximum abilities, and that tiny narrow band is where the Cure existed in terms of a rhythm section for a number of years. And this is, by the way, not a criticism. Lol is not the best drummer in the world. It's not a criticism, he just isn't. I can prove it if I need to. Good drummer, great drummer for the Cure, but not the best one in the world. And as you'll see when the band changed drummers, is that they have the ability to go at faster speeds. If Lol is a very, very good mini Metro, then perhaps some of the other drummers might be Lamborghinis or Ferraris. Sorry, man, but there you go. Anyway, 17 Seconds gets a release, and then after 17 Seconds, the band go back into the studio, still touring, still playing live, still badgering on, and the first thing which comes out from that is Primary. Now, Primary got a 7-inch release, it got a 12-inch release, and this is the first time, by the way, that the 12-inch gets an extended mix on the 12-inch, so there's an alternate extended 12-inch version of Primary on the 12-inch. The reason I never bought this 12-inch until relatively recently is because it tells me it's Primary on there. It tells me it's Primary on there. There's really no point me buying a 12-inch if it's got exactly the same tracks, mixes, performances and versions on the 7-inch that it has on the 12-inch, because as I have mentioned before, I didn't have a huge amount of money, and I really needed to stretch that money as far as I could. So it took me until last year to buy a copy of Primary on 12-inch when I realised it had an alternate 12-inch mix. Please don't think any less of me. I am only human. But yes, Primary was the first single to come out from the next album. And the cover was created by Paul and Undy, which worked together as Parched Art. Paul being the band's first guitarist, who left before the recording of Three Imaginary Boys and later played in the band a couple of extra times, who also does some fantastic visual work, which you can follow. I think he's on Instagram, and you can follow his work and you can see his work, and it's very, very good. And when you see it, you clearly go, that's Curish. There's just something about the band's visual identity, which was defined by his visual work. And as I mentioned in the previous episode when I was talking about Mogwai, is there are some bands, there's an inherent characteristic or a personality in a cover to an album, and you go, that's Mogwai, that's The Cure, that's Depeche Mode, and you don't know what it is, but when you see it, you know that's what it is. And this looks like no other band from the time. This cover couldn't have been on New Order, it couldn't have been on OMD, it couldn't have been on Bauhaus or anyone like that. That's a Cure cover there. And Primary is a great track. It's a dense, fast, loud, pounding, angry thing about how you forget your dreams, and the chorus goes, the older we grow, the less we know, and that's really about, as you grow older, you lose touch with some of the things that you loved and adored, and the things that made you a child and have sense of wonder. That first time, like for example, the joy that you had if you were playing with Star Wars toys, or if you were madly into Lego, or if, like, for example, if you were my age, you really read movie novelizations. That's the type of thing, is as you get older, you forget the things which sometimes made you who you were, and Primary is all about that. Great track, backed with Descent, by the way, not so great, clearly B-side material, but still good enough to play live on the Reflection show. So that was Primary, and the third album by The Cure. And at this point, by the way, Matthew had left the group. And I probably should point out why Matthew's left the group, but I haven't rehearsed it by going in here. But I think probably the band felt that they just needed to, consolidate. And so one of the things is that I'm just trying to see if there's a description of why The Cure were a trio, and there's never really, a description in this around why Matthew left the group. And Matthew said, when I got home, I rang Robert to tell him I was leaving. I knew he would never have wronged me, partly because he was scared and partly because he was tired. And so I think the decision was, it was just sometimes you do a job for a while and then you realise that it's not the right one for you. And Matthew said, I was starting to get pissed off with the direction the band was taking. It wasn't my style of music at all. I was being treated childishly. Robert had stopped talking to me. I'd had enough. It showed when we played, and people would come up and ask me questions about the songs, and I couldn't answer them. They used to ask me if I liked Joy Division, and they're exactly the kind of group that I can't stand, and that wasn't the way that that sort of thing didn't interest me at all. Matthew, I think, was probably more interested in poppier stuff, probably more interested about material like Play for Today, as opposed to stuff like Doubt and The Drowning Man and All Cats Are Grey, which is good because he doesn't play on any of those, I think. So it was really, really good in expanding, the group's horizons, and they never took a step back from that. So here is the third album, Faith. And Faith is, again, like the other albums, to me, I experience this as a historical artifact as opposed to a living, breathing object in front of me. So, by the way, this is not the original inner sleeve, because the original inner sleeves have the month of manufacture on here. This was from July 1986, this one. I really shouldn't know that. I should get a life. But here is Faith on vinyl. It's a very interesting album. It captures a very specific mood, a mood that's very similar to Disintegration, to a latter extent, Pornography and Bloodflowers as well. It's a really desolate album, and I think the cover really captures exactly what it is. Is that the picture is, I think, a foggy photograph of an abbey somewhere, probably in Norfolk, I think, maybe Norwich, somewhere maybe starting with N, maybe even Northampton, who knows. Definitely not Nuneaton, because that's the type of place Nuneaton is. But Faith, I mean, the cover really clearly depicts what the album is, and it's a kind of like an abstract, very impressionistic kind of album about faith and belief and death. And I think Lol's mother died either during the recording of this album or the touring of it. And it kind of hung over as a legacy over the whole album. There's a sense really of having the joy sucked out of existence when you listen to this. The songs are slow, they're funeral pace, they're very kind of ethereal, very measured, very timely, really glum. And apart from Primary and Doubt, and some of the Cure's best songs are on here. Other Voices and Faith are just great songs, but you really do have to be in a kind of desolate, knackered, exhausted, depressed state of mind. I think it's an underrated classic in the band's body of work. I absolutely love this album, and I think it's been very influential on a lot of bands that I love as well. So I think it's influenced Mogwai, it's influenced the Twilight Sad, it's influenced probably Fields of the Nephilim in some areas as well. Maybe some post-rock bands as well. Very, very good album. Absolutely love it. Not the best place to start, but very good album. And the cassette version of the album came here with a soundtrack to a film called Carnage Visors. Carnage Visors is effectively a kind of like a way of describing the phrase rose-tinted spectacles. And it was a short half-an-hour film which would play on a screen in front of the stage, effectively as a support act. I think the film itself, the visuals for Carnage Visors have been lost now, which is a shame. Inevitably it would appear on a DVD, and I think it was made and put together by Simon's brother. But for a long time, the only place you could get the soundtrack to Carnage Visors was on this cassette. So of course I bought it, because that's what I do. And the next time that Carnage Visors was released was again 2006. So there's a 2 CD remastered expanded version of the album, which features, I think, let me just quickly count up, 8 studio demos, including a couple of unreleased tracks, being Going Home Time, the Violin Song, and A Normal Story, as well as, I think, 6, 7 live songs from the tour, which of course includes the live songs from the tour that were released in a limited edition format on the Concert and Curiosity cassette here. If you're going to buy a version of it on CD and you're a completist, this is absolutely the version to get. Essential version of the album. And between this and Pornography and 17 Seconds and Three Imaginary Boys, you kind of get a live album of the Cure's early years anyway, although it does cover a number of lineups in a number of years. Now, if you were in the United States, you might not have bought 17 Seconds or Faith. You might have bought a slightly different release, which is called Happily Ever After. This I bought in 1999 from a record shop in Willenhall in West Midlands, and it has a severely bashed up sleeve here, so it was very definitely more affordable than normal. I think I paid £10 I think for this then, and I remember my then girlfriend's mother asked me, well, why did you buy it? And I was like, well, I like the Cure, and I like albums, and I like listening to music on vinyl and all that kind of stuff. And these have the wonderful generic company sleeves for A&M Records here. But it's effectively the Cure's first double album. Although really I don't know quite why this was released. I don't know what the reason was for it. I don't really care. I'm not quite sure what that photograph is or what it represents either. But I presume in America they thought that it was a way of being able to sell people to Cure records for the price of one, and maybe give the band a bit of a plug. Happily Ever After is an inappropriate name for the Doom and Gloom Fest that sits on this record, indeed. And then the next kind of thing that happened was the single Charlotte Sometimes. Again, here's a 12-inch. I don't have the 7-inch for it, because why would I have the 7-inch if I could have the 12-inch, which has got the 12-inch has got Charlotte Sometimes splintered in her head, and a truly, truly epic version of Faith recorded live, I think, in the Netherlands, which is about 10.5 minutes long. It's absolutely monster, and it's miserable as hell. And if you want to get totally bummed out, listen to it. But it's fantastic. You know, the band were putting forward and playing very dense, very miserable, intense shows. You know, the kind of intensity that you can really probably only have once or twice in your career. The kind of intensity it's really, really difficult to kind of escape as your life becomes better and as you become older. There's a lot of teenage angst in these albums, and that's not a criticism. I was a teenager. I was chock full of angst. And, you know, these albums really, really spoke to me. But again, as I've said before, they were historical artifacts to me. So I didn't experience them in real time. The lineup, when I got to listen to these albums, the lineup had ceased to exist. You know, the band had splintered. These songs were played live by a 5-piece version of the band when I fell in love with the band. And there's a cat that's come into the room now as well. And all cats are grey, apart from this one, which is black. That's not rehearsed, by the way. I know damn well not to try and rehearse anything with a cat. They'll do whatever the hell they want, whenever they bloody well feel like it, because that's how cats work. And here he is. This is Price. Oh, is you burping? And he's definitely a black cat there. I'm going to put you down because I think that's what you're feeling. Okay, there you go. But he hates being locked out of any room. So I shut the door, and lo and behold, the cat's going to get in, because cats are going to cat. That's what they do. They absolutely do. They never ever listen. If I say to any of the cats, "Oh, do something," they look at me like, "That's not how it works. We have staff. We tell you what to do." They look at you, and you kind of go, "Oh yeah, must get biscuits," you know, that kind of thing. So that's Charlotte Sometimes. Charlotte Sometimes is a great track, and it's played live at a faster pace by the band. So when I first heard it, I thought there was something wrong with the record, because I'm like, how can this record be like that when the band play it like this? But yeah, the band play it faster live, and it's better live. And of course, the first version of it that I heard live was the version that's in the early part of the Cure in Orange TV broadcast. And that leads us on to the last part of the band's discography. This is the probably what's regarded by many people as one of the best Cure albums, not by me, but Pornography. This is a hard bloody album to listen to. If you think 17 seconds is kind of like dealing with the complications of adult life, and Faith is dealing with, you know, the classic states. If you think about the states of grief, you know, denial, bargaining, depression, anger, acceptance, then you've got almost in those, you've got 17 seconds is the bargaining, and Faith is the depression. This is the anger. This is an angry, furious album about the state of the world. It opens with one of the best Cure songs, which is 100 Years. And, you know, the opening line, if you've got an opening line for an album, it goes, "It doesn't matter if we all die." That's it, man. You're putting Chekhov's gun on the table, and you're pointing that gun right at your own head. It's not mucking about. It's miserable as hell, this album. I have great love for it. It's perhaps, I'm slightly distanced from the album because everyone else tells me how amazing it is, and it's really bloody good. But perhaps amazing is not the word. It's a really difficult, tough album to listen to. Lol is playing at the absolute limit of his abilities. Matthew obviously has left the group an album or two ago, so all the keyboards are being played off tape or foot pedals when the band are playing live, and it's just this dark, dense sound that is really all-encompassing. If you want to know what it sounds like to be eaten alive by a black hole, then this is what Pornography is absolutely about. It's an album about being consumed by emotions, and there's anger and fear, and there's a kind of fighting, and resistance to it as you go along. And of course, even at this point, the band have started to wipe out their own identities. They're wearing masks on the cover. I mean, aside from identifying the hairstyles, you can't really work out who's who. By the way, Robert, Lol, and Simon, I think. And it's all presented in a way, it even looks like they're in the Phantom Zone from the Superman movies, actually. When you look at that, you can hear them, and there's, like, you know, Zod, Ursula, and Non floating away, going, "Ah, you will bow down before me, all the Goths. Kneel! Tremble! I will make you bow down before me, both you and one day your heirs. Obviously, I have Zod's, what's the word I'm thinking of here? I have his beard, but nothing else. This one cost me £3.30. The reason I know it cost me £3.30 is because the price tag is still written inside the sleeve there, which, when you think about it, an original Cure album for £3.30. But, you know, when I bought this 1989, 1990, the album was 7 years old. You know, you go to a charity shop these days and you pick up a 7-year-old album and it's like £1.99. That's the kind of thing we're dealing with here. You know, nobody knew there was going to be a big vinyl revival. Records were old hat. Everyone was buying CDs. I was buying records because they were cheaper. If CDs were cheaper, I would have bought CDs. I'd have less records, and I'd also have less storage problems in the house. But Pornography is a really tough listen. It kind of feels like being crushed to death inside a room. If you want to think about a movie analogy for it, it's probably the room in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom where the wall comes down from the ceiling and they're covered by bugs. That's what Pornography is like as an album. Or perhaps even if this was a video game, it would be the end screen of Manic Miner, a boot stamping on a human face forever. This is an album that really is kind of resisting and at war with reality. And it's a hard listen, and it's got some amazing songs on it. It's got 100 Years, A Strange Day, you know, it's got A Short-Term Effect. They all create this very kind of hypnotic, very dense, very one-dimensional, simplistic kind of musical backing, and they explore every possible permutation that those kind of relatively limited melody lines can bring up. It's a really great album, and it's hard to listen to. But at the end of it, the end of the Pornography album, it feels like there's a door being shut, slammed in your face, telling you that that's it, that's the end, because it was the last time that those three people would exist as a lineup, would play live, would record in the studio. So Simon, Lowell and Robert, that lineup didn't last beyond this album and this tour, and they split after that. They did one single. This is the double pack 7-inch version, which is called, there's a 10-inch version of this as well, which is called a single, and they contain the same tracks. So this has got The Hanging Garden and 100 Years, and then it's got Forest and Killing an Arab live in Manchester, which is produced by Phil Fornelly. And Phil Fornelly later went on to be a bass player for The Cure. But this 7-inch is... The B-sides on this have not been reissued. They aren't on the Pornography reissue. They aren't on the Curiosity cassette because they're not from the parent album at all. They're, you know, stuck on the 7-inch and on the 10-inch to kind of make it a more attractive proposition. This is a really great little 7-inch. Probably difficult and expensive to get, but if you can find it, track it down. If not, the live versions are on YouTube. And as I've said before, you know, this lineup of the band, this period of the band, was for me very much an abstract concept. By the time I came to it, this lineup of the band was dead. It was a historical existence as opposed to an actual existence. By the way, the cat is over there climbing on shelves. That's why I'm looking over there, because he still really wants to track down all the odd little things that live in the shelves, because that's what cats do, isn't it? There is a 2006 double CD version of Pornography that features, let me quickly check, 7, 8 studio demos and unreleased tracks, including a track called Temptation 2. And then there's I think another 6 or 7 live songs recorded from the tour, so effectively a little mini album from the tour as well. Stop it, dude! Don't you answer back. And so that's where the lineup ended, and the band effectively, you know, collapsed into smithereens on the tour. Everybody hated everybody else. Everybody was drinking or taking drugs or all the other things that go with it. Nobody was happy. And by the time of the end of the Pornography tour, The Cure had, to all intents and purposes, split, although they just didn't tell anybody. Robert and Simon didn't speak for 18 months. Robert got a phone call from, I think, Steve Severin, who asked him if he wanted to join Susie and the Banshees, and Robert said yes, and then that was it. To all intents and purposes, The Cure were dead, which, by the way, the last song that they played on the last show of the tour was an improvised instrumental called The Cure Are Dead. And as I understand it, one of the band's road crew, I think it was Gary Biddles, who later went on to sing in a band called Presence with Lol Tolhurst, came on stage and told everyone that Simon Gallup was a wanker and Robert Smith was a bastard and so on and so forth. At least according to this. And the text on the backs of this, here it is, the authorised, the official, the real, truth and lies from the mouths that count and the reasons why, the answers, the explanations, the obscurities, and all the ways to skin a cat. I don't even know if this is available somewhere on the internet as a PDF. I really hope it is, actually, because it's an absolutely fascinating read. But the last gig the band played was at the Ancien Belgique in Brussels, the AB. Lovely venue, actually. Fantastic venue. I love it to bits, apart from the token system at the bar. Doesn't make any sense. Why do you have to pay cash to buy tokens to then go to a bar and turn up? It's stupid. And he said, before the concert, Lol and I sat in the dressing room miserable because we knew it was the end. The show was flat, and during the encore, Biddles came on and started singing, Smith's a wanker, Tolhurst's a wanker, only Simon's worth anything in this band. Robert was drumming, and so I stopped, threw the drumsticks at the back of his head and told him to fuck off, and that was that. That was the end of it. As far as anyone else was concerned, The Cure may never have played again, but that is a battle for another day. As bad scriptwriters tell you, no time to explain, get in the car! And what that really means is I haven't worked out why this plot in this film really exists or happens, and I can't be bothered to explain it. I'm going to invent a reason of urgency, which means I can't explain, and therefore I can't explain. That is that. Right, I'm going to stop there. And thank you for your time, and hopefully you've indulged His Highness the Catster. Would you like to come over and say anything to anybody, sir? No, he's staring furiously at my cup of tea. That is why I can never be a cat, because I never stare furiously at a cup of tea. I always go, I'm going to drink you. Cats are like, well, you really annoyed me, you cup of tea. I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you. And that's that. Right. I'll do another one soon. I'm brimming with ideas about things to talk about. If you've got any suggestions, which are nice and legible and printable in a family web page, then stick them in the comments below, and I will catch up with you at some other point. I should have pointed out, by the way, I am wearing a Cure t-shirt today. This is for the 2016 tour, because the era which I'm talking about was between the ages of, I think, 6 and 9. For me, I obviously don't have a Cure t-shirt from that period because I didn't see the band play live. The first time I saw the band play live was quite a few years later, and when we get to that point, I'll talk about it. But in the meantime, I just tell you my experiences of these records. I have a really strange relationship with them because, as I've said all the way through, they to me are historical documents. They're transmissions from a time that had ceased to exist. And by the time that I got to watching, hearing and reading about them, I might as well have been reading about a Napoleon who sings, because Napoleon was, dead by the time I became aware of his existence. This version of The Cure ceased to exist long before I liked The Cure, and I'm absolutely fascinated with how we were able to build memories and associations with bands that actually were not around at the time that we were around. It's an absolutely fascinating thing. As I mentioned actually in a post on Twitter, songs are time machines. They take you back to a certain place and a certain time where perhaps you first experienced them, and the memories, feelings and emotions that you had at the time. So when I first heard all of these records, I was 15, 16 years old. I hadn't been in a relationship. Ideas of being broken-hearted were abstract concepts to me. All I knew about relationships were what I'd seen on television or what I'd experienced in reading books. And so I was trying to understand and grasp adult emotions, and these records helped navigate my way through a minefield of growing up. They're really important, and I'm really glad that I like the bands that I like, and I'm really glad that you've spent the time to get this far into me monologuing about it. So on behalf of me and all the happy chaps in masks in The Cure, we're going to stop now, and I'll catch up with you some other time. Okay, thank you, goodbye, and it doesn't matter if we all die. See you later.